it. So, hey everyone, the real estate numbers are in for April. Let's see what happened. I'm Riyad from Right Home Realty.
Will Ellis from Right at Home Realty.
And Sadiq from Approved Financial Services.
Glad to have you guys here. So I'll do an overview of what happened in the general market. Will touch about the Durham market, and then Sadiq will go over what he's seeing in the mortgage world. So for the overall market, residential transactions, so year over year, we've had a decrease of 41.2% in transactions. So in April 2021, we had about 13,000 transactions. In April 2022, we had about 8,000 transactions. Month over month, we're down about 26.2% as well. March 2022, we had about 8,600 new transactions. And in April, we had about 6,300 transactions. Moving on to the average selling price, this is where everybody kind of wants to know what's happening. Year over year, we're actually up 15%. April 2021 it was about $1,090,000 for the average selling price, and then April 2022 about 1.25 million. Month over month, we're actually down 6.4%. So in March we had about a $1.285 million average selling price, and in this month for April we had a 1.202. And the last one is total new listings. Year over year, we're down about 11.7%. April 2021, we had about 20,800 new listings. And then April 2022, we're down about 18,400. So that's the general overall in the markets. We'll move on to what's happening in Durham.
I'm not as organized as you are there, Reed. I have like two monitors going here. I'm trying to read up because you're very good. You're very scripted.
Getting there.
So again, if I'm incorrect with what I'm reviewing here, let me know. But I just, overall the market in Durham was down. And again, just overall sales are down 21.6%. The average price is down as well to 1.154 million. There's also a slight drop in listings of down 5%. And yeah, that's where we are. I mean, I believe that the numbers are not as bad as people made them out to be.
Yeah.
And I think we as a world need to realize that if everything was perfect in your own life and all the time, the market's been great to everyone, but I think things need to adjust. And I think the market is still very reasonable to both buyers and sellers.
100%, yeah. Okay, and Sadiq, what are you seeing in the mortgage world?
Well, we're seeing rates on the fixed rates for the most part have, been going up despite any talks about the Bank of Canada's overnight lending rate, if they're going or not. The bond market itself has just been, increasing because the stock market has been hurting. So it's the natural transition. So we're seeing the long-term bond yields going up, making the mortgage rates go up. And that's why a lot of people don't really understand that, what the government of Canada does with the overnight lending rate does have an impact, but not directly with fixed mortgage rates. Fixed mortgage rates are going to move regardless of what the government of Canada is doing because of the bond market. And we're seeing that. And what's happened now, as you guys know, and, your viewers and listeners may know about the stress test and the qualifying criteria. So the government of Canada, there's two ways of qualifying depending on what the rate is, whether it's 2% above your contract rate, the rate you're actually getting, or the government mandated rate of 5.25 currently. Well, whichever is the higher rate is the one you have to qualify at. Right now, where fixed rates are at like 4.19, 4.25, you're qualifying at 6.19, 6.25, which is obviously higher than 5.25. So that now is bringing people's purchasing power down, and their pre-approval that they had, 60 days ago may not stand up anymore for that dollar amount. The workaround to that, yeah,
question.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
You said I was going to ask that question, so I'm glad you brought it up. So if someone is thinking about buying, let's say in the next 90 days, does it make sense for them to get approved, lock in a rate?
Yeah.
That speak to that, because I think that's important.
Yeah. So locking in the rate is actually the more important part, because to be honest with you, and I've said this time and time again to people, pre-approvals aren't worth the paper it's printed on. Everybody wants a pre-approval, but when you read that pre-approval, it's subject to every possible thing a bank is subject to. So it's really it's like saying, okay, you're good in this snapshot of a moment, but any one of these variables changes and this document doesn't matter anymore, right? A very common factor that changes a pre-approval that's overlooked often by consumers and even by mortgage people who don't have the experience and the understanding of these factors is property taxes. So if I pre-approve a client, let's just say for a $900,000 property, and they go shopping across the Durham region, we know property taxes in Oshawa compared to property taxes in Ajax, quite different. They find a $900,000 property in Oshawa where the taxes are a little bit higher, and compared to Ajax, and now all of a sudden that 900,000 approval doesn't stand up anymore because it was based on property taxes that was less, right? So that's where things kind of go a little bit wonky with pre-approvals. Quite often, people will say, you'll hear they're like, we're pre-approved and now we're not. What happened, right? It's factors like that. So what's the best thing for a home buyer to do is have those numbers run, but have it run based on your best case scenario, your worst case scenario, with that kind of range of where could the property taxes be. And then as they see properties they're interested in and they want to put an offer in, is to then say, okay, based on this listing, on this specific property, does my number still hold up, right? And realistically, whether it's myself and my team or any other mortgage broker out there, it should take minutes to update an application to reflect those numbers. So it's not like, oh, give me another day. Well, I got to put in an offer today. I need more time. No. It's a couple minutes, update the information, punch in the new property taxes. Do the ratios still look good? Yeah, move forward, right? But that's really the critical part. It's not just get a pre-approval, walk away, go buy a property. It has to be a little bit of a dialogue, because each property has different factors that may take that pre-approval and basically throw it in the garbage if the numbers still don't, if the numbers, one number looks like it's lining up, but the other numbers won't line up. Right?
So if a buyer is qualifying today, they're doing a pre-approval today, how long is that rate locked in for?
Depending on the lender, it's good for 90 to 120 days. Most lenders will go to 120.
So they have to close in the 120 days or have an APS or agreement to purchase sale in those 120 days?
Close in 120
Okay.
days. Yeah, right. So one of the key things for clients too is, like, if you're going out there shopping, depending on how long after that pre-approval, you might want to look at a quicker closing date to fit within there. Some lenders will give you a little bit of leeway, like 121 days, 122, but they're not going to push you to 140 days. Right.
Okay.
So sometimes you can get a little bit of leeway. The other thing I was going to touch on as a workaround to that stress test being the higher of the contract rate plus 2% right now because of the fixed rates, is for clients to take a variable rate mortgage, because they'll have to qualify at the 5.25. Now, the first thing they're going to say is, well, hold on, variable rates are going to go up, right? But if you take a variable rate mortgage with a solid institutional lender that will allow you to early renew that mortgage into a fixed, you could literally sign, close, and the next day walk in there and say, okay, I want to switch it to a fixed now. And you just worked around that whole qualifying at the 625 versus qualifying at the 525 and give yourself that little bit extra borrowing power.
That's gold.
Right? Yeah.
Right. Now, what about, like, I've heard of issues with some closings, not any of my clients, but I've heard issues where, let's just say someone bought a property in March and then now in May, the bank wants to do an appraisal. Now, pricing has gotten soft in the last, 8 weeks. What are ways in which, and maybe you don't know the answer there, Sadiq, how can people sort of, work around this situation?
Well, I think a really important part is get that appraisal done as soon as you can, right? So if you purchase in March, let's just say beginning of March, within a week of getting that approval, you should have your mortgage person, your bank, whoever, getting that appraiser out there, because between March and May, everything's changed, and that appraiser is going to look back at the last 90-day history. So for every week goes forward, that 90-day history is shifting along with it, and you may be losing out on properties that were comparable, that supported your value, to ones that now are selling for less, that are not supporting that value. And I've seen that happen. It's crazy, and you guys very well knows, I don't have to tell you guys, the market is really unpredictable right now. You're seeing, properties that still have 12 offers on it, and then you're seeing properties that are sitting there with no offers on it. And it's hard to price a property. And for an appraiser, they're looking at historical sales in the last 90 days. Well, that with those sales numbers changing and how many multiple offers are happening and when they're happening, on which properties they're happening, leaves an appraiser in a very ambiguous spot. And what they're going to do is be conservative, because nothing bad happens when you're conservative, and they can't get in trouble. So they're going to side on a lower amount as much as possible to protect themselves. So if you get your appraiser out there right away, they're going to use the most recent data that they have, which would tend to support your value versus if you waited a month later, 2 months later.
Good.
Perfect.
That's good. So let's talk about the future, because now there's some humming and hawing with regards, because in my opinion, as a realtor, the market is like any market. There'll be ups and downs, but with the whole fact now that buyers have had 2 to 3 years now, just having to compete, having to be quick and fast. Now people have a bit of time. How do you see the potential new hike happening next month, June, impacting the market for the summer?
Well, you know what? It's one of those things where, I mean, first of all, if we had a crystal ball, right, I wouldn't be talking to you guys. I'd be rich. I'd be on a beach somewhere, right? So, but we really don't know. But based on what we see and what we can extrapolate from, just historical data plus, human behavior, we're going to have a little bit of self-fulfilling prophecy. If everybody believes the market's going to tank, people start behaving like the market's going to tank, and then the market tanks. If everybody believes the market's going to boom, they're going to behave like the market's going to boom, right? I think right now there's both sides of that conversation happening, and what we're going to end up have is this middle ground where we're going to get back to that balanced market, and we're going to stop seeing properties that are listed for 400,000 over what the market value is to get the multiple offers, and people are going to list closer to what I want. Maybe they're going to list a little bit under, right, to get a little bit of attention to the property, but not the huge differentials that we were seeing before. And we're going to see the negotiations that happen will be kind of more, the conversations that will happen is more like, well, what's your sweet spot? What's the number you want? And let's see if we could put a deal together here, right? And I think that's the more of the conversations where we get back to that balanced market. And I think as we get to that and the dust starts settling and people start realizing, okay, listings are happening closer to the price people want. So if I see that, I can go in close to that price. I may have to negotiate a little bit, may have to pay a little bit higher than that, but at least I'm not going in with seeing this number, but having to pay that number. And that's going to change the buyer mentality. They're going to feel a little bit more confident. The people who are sitting on the sidelines or that were had that multiple offer burnout of losing and losing and losing, they might say, okay, hey, you know what? Things are settled a little bit. Yeah, let's get back in. So we're going to start seeing where both sides are going to start coming back into the table, because as we discussed before, it's everybody needs a home to live in, right? It gets cold outside, so we're going to get those people coming back in. And as the market settles and people start realizing it's not doom and gloom, it's still a healthy market, everybody's going to come back to the table, and we're going to be good. We will be guaranteed.
Perfect.
Where do you see pricing going?
I think we won't see drastic increases. We'll see moderate increases, right? It's not going to be the rocket ship taking off into space. It's going to be the plane, taking off instead, right? And we're going to have, I'd say maybe moderately between, depending on your market and stuff like that, between 5 to 10% increases across the year, which I think is healthy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah, because even though like I'm looking at the Durham stats, I'm looking at all the stats. No one's saying those sales are I think CP24's big headline on Wednesday was, oh, markets crash, 41.6% decline in sales. Read the article, which this is why I the media needs to sort of be better at sort of projecting the truth. Pricing is up year over year 21.6%. So though the sales volume has come down, which is a given when you have more inventory, it's spring, we have things happening, Ukraine rates, all this COVID, whatever. I think it's important that people need to sort of read, do their due diligence, I can't even say due diligence, and also realize that market, like pricing is really just down 6% month over month. But if you bought a property a year ago, you've made over 20% in terms of appreciation. And again, if the market continues to go down, let's say 5% per month for the rest of the year, based on what happened last year, the market will still be up year over year around 20%.
Yeah.
So people think about it that way. You can't think about a home or any purchase or anything in terms of a month.
Yeah.
You gotta think about over in terms of a long-term, this is an investment for everyone, long-term plan. Because in the history of the last 30 years, and maybe Sadiq out of my ass, it's possible. But real estate tends to never be down.
100%. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think we need to realize that, and the overreaction and everyone react to everything you see in the media is.
And talk to the right people. That's the biggest thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
It's dumb.
stats are one of those things that anybody, it's in the eye of the beholder. Anybody can manipulate the same stat to support their case, right? I can take a stat and make it sound positive or negative, just depending on how I want to portray it. And stats are good reflection, a good guidance, but you got to look at the on the ground what's really happening, right? And that's where the value in clients working with guys like you who are out there full-time in the market, seeing what's happening, dealing with transactions, experiencing the transactions to say, okay, what's happening? Not just look at these numbers and say, okay, this broad picture, because again, real estate is local. Okay, what's happening in Durham, in Ajax may not be happening the same way in Oshawa, varying degrees.
Right.
What's happening in Durham may not be the same thing happening in Peel. And when we look at these big stats, we say things are down, but regionally, things might be going in a total different direction. And if you're looking to buy in, let's say, Durham region, do you really care what the average price in Peel is? That's not your market you're looking at. And when you lump those stats in there, it might sound pessimistic, but meanwhile, Durham is hot and healthy, and it has been for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, this is still a good time to buy, right?
Yeah, exactly. I find it interesting, the numbers. Everyone's like, oh, detached home sales are down 40, whatever. They're down a lot, detached home sales. But condo sales are down only 15%. So in my opinion, as a person that looked at these stats, and you would know from what I was saying earlier, but I looked at these stats in depth. I think some buyers are also shifting their plan from buying a more expensive property to a condo, which is also driving down the average price of homes. Because remember, like, it's all types of homes that I've seen, downward sales, but I keep seeing condos that are down 15%, but their price year over year is up 22.4%. So again, people need to look at all the numbers, get a feel for things. The homes are not, the market will not crash. The market will not crash, but the buying patterns of buyers will adjust and change with the market, and that's normal.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, that was great.
It's perfect.
Okay, so everyone who's watching, stay tuned. You can follow Will on Instagram. You can follow me, Riyadh the Realtor. Will, what's your handle?
So it's Agent Will Ellis on Instagram and on Facebook. Riyadh, what's your handle?
Riyadh the Realtor on both Instagram and Facebook. Sadiq?
I'm at Sadiq Budu, both Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Take care.